AskReddit by Bunkernoy. What's the most bizarre coincidence you've ever experienced? When I was in college as a foreigner, I got hit by a car and some dude was kind enough to get my stuff, call an ambulance, help me call my family. Due to the shock, I couldn't remember him and I had to take a semester off because I broke my hip into two parts. When I got back to school, he was in the same class as me and he showed me my dad's contact with his name as proof. He and I became friends. That's certainly a memorable way to make a new friend. Hope your body's doing better now. I was on a date with a girl once and we were driving in my car to wherever we were going. I was telling her a story about a friend of mine who'd recently gotten rear-ended right as we were stopping at a red light. While I was telling her the story, a car in the next lane went flying past and rear-ended a stopped car. As I was talking and saw it, I pointed to it and said it was just like that right there. Took a few seconds for it to sink in how strange of a coincidence it was. Now tell a story about how someone who replied to your Reddit posts and later won the lottery. My brother used to buy these technology related magazines called Digit for me every month. It had been almost a decade since he had done that, and one day I just randomly thought about that magazine and remembered that he used to buy them. Several hours later, on the same day, he visited our house and gave me a new edition of that magazine. He saw them in a shop and remembered how he used to buy them for me, so he got one. Maybe you had the thought at the exact moment he saw them. Deleted. Plot twist. You're twins. One of your guys' moms didn't want twins and gave one of you to the other person. You might be the clone. Good friend in Grand Junction company. We tried dating but we're much better as friends. Couple years later, after I had moved away and lost touch, I was living in Alaska. Go to do a hot tub repair and lo and behold, it's her house. Was the second time the charm? My dad and his friend, who were both from Sweden, went on a holiday to Las Vegas in the 80s. After a night of partying, they decide to go to a random diner, and while standing in the parking lot they run into two Swedish girls who were also there on vacation. Maybe not that big of a coincidence, except the fact that my dad and that friend went to Vegas again exactly 10 years after, go to the same diner and run into the same two women in the parking lot again. Edit. No, they weren't prostitutes, lol. The same two women in the same parking lot in Vegas 10 years apart? Sounds like hookers to me. I was in a natural history museum and saw a picture of the Thagomizer on a Stegosaurus skeleton. I was telling my friends about the history of it when I pulled up the Wikipedia article. The picture on the wiki article was the exact thing I was standing in front of, from the exact same angle. +1 for the Far Side reference. Start chatting and drinking with a couple guys while on vacation in Tokyo, who also were visiting. A week later, we get to Kyoto, take the metro to our hotel, and as soon as we got out the station and onto the street, here they were again. I had to get a difficult to obtain medication approved through insurance. There was a lot of back and forth and then finally they approved it. I got an email saying it was approved with my first and last name and age all correct, but the city was wrong. I called insurance and they realized they made a mistake and got confused with someone else due to the similarities. So someone in Brooklyn not only shares my exact name and age, but also my same disease. My grandmother had an odd name and there was someone in the same town with similar birthday but same name as her. It was discovered after she picked up a ton of meds that the pharmacy didn't realize was for two separate people. This was before HIPAA, so they just met up and switched around everything. Was at a hostel in Amsterdam and met a fellow traveler wearing the same shirt as me, from the same city as me, and had the same name as me. Mirror? My family had a shadow family. They lived a block away from us and had the same street address with a different street name. So our address was 34,827 Main Street and theirs was 34,827 Munn Street. This is how we learned of them. Mail kept getting crossed. Our last names shared the same first letter and number of letters. They had 2 kids, same age as myself and my brother. Our first names shared the same first letter. We got a dog, they got a dog. Same litter. From a town about 250 miles away. The breeder named the dogs after famous people. First name went to our dog, last name to their dog. Oh, and the dogs were the only ones of those breed that I saw for about 15 years. My friend had a shadow family. We didn't notice for years because we were always just far enough away from his home to notice his shadow mom and shadow sister parked a few houses down the block in their identical shadow Land Rover. They waved the same too, and then one day my friend's like, I don't think that's even my mom. We were in high school. My husband and I were trying to keep our relationship secret at our workplace, then ran into a co-worker during breakfast buffet on a cruise in Cozumel. Geez. Sorry. I'm quite possibly the most embarrassing moment of my young life. When on holiday at a Butlins type caravan park, I went looking for my mum in a crowded arcade to ask for more coins. Thought I saw her, so ran up behind her and gave her a hug, only to find it was a complete stranger. My actual mum was watching from a nearby table and laughing her ass off at me. The imposter mum brought me over to the table and ended up chatting with my mum. Then my younger siblings turned up with 2 random kids in tow saying they'd made some new friends. Could we sit with them at the entertainment that night? It was that lady's kids. Both families ended up getting along really well and we hung out most of the week but didn't really keep in touch. 3 years later we went to visit my auntie in Greece where she was living at the time, and on the beach one day someone came up behind me and gave me a surprise hug. Same family again. We ended up keeping in touch for several years after that. That's freaking wild. I once had a porcelain statue in my apartment. Then I had a grad student do a deep cleaning of my apartment. Fast forward, the statue is now missing from my apartment, and it's turned up in their apartment. Pretty big coincidence if you ask me. Jerry. At the 50-year anniversary of the end of WW11, an American veteran was retracing his steps where he had been stationed in Florence, Italy. I was working as an au pair for a lovely family and was idling my time at a cafe when he asked me for directions to Viareggio. He seemed lost and we asked where he was headed. He was looking for Via di Meticulously. We narrowed II down and ultimately, I told him that I could guarantee that his old girlfriend did not still live at that apartment because I lived there myself. We were able to track down the woman who had rented the apartment during the war because the building was owned by the family I was working for. Everyone was very excited about all of this and we ended up hosting that American veteran for dinner at THR apartment. Damn, who won World War XI? My family has been going to the same beach in Florida since my dad was a kid. When I was in JR high school I met this really cute girl on the beach and hit it off really well, but she was staying at a hotel a few buildings north of us and was leaving a few days before we did, so we only got to hang out for like 2 solid days. I made the mistake of not getting her phone number, pre-cell phone era, and when she left I felt like I would never see her again. That was 1999. In 2010 I was in college in Michigan and at a party when I see this girl walk by and stop to talk with one of my roommates. She looked super familiar, so I went and said hi, and it turned out to be that same girl from the beach all those years ago. We hit it off and spent the next few hours chatting. We eventually dated for a little over a year but broke up due to distance. She'll show back up again, don't worry. Did a project in college, in Georgia, with a girl that lived with her brother. At the end of the project I invited everyone who worked on the project over for dinner and also invited her brother. They had hosted us for dinner while we worked on the project several times. Had a great meal, finished the project and never talked to them again. And X200B. Fast forward 10 years, I went to a conference on the opposite side of the country with one of my co-workers. The conference was near where he used to live work and he says, hey, let's get lunch with some of my old friends. So we met them at In-N-Out. One of the friends was the brother of the girl I did the project with. I couldn't even believe it was happening. It felt so surreal. My cousin and I are very close personally, but we now live about 2k miles apart. We were both traveling in a different state than either of us lived, me visiting a friend and him on business. Neither of us knew. I was walking close to the main square in the town and this car is driving the wrong way on a one-way street down the road towards the crosswalk I was in. I mentioned to my friend, "Wow, this guy's an idiot," as I was gesturing him to turn around. Well, turns out, it was my cousin. This happened just yesterday. I was downtown waiting in my truck outside of a job site to meet a man, who we will call Steve, for a job walk. I had never met Steve face to face. Another truck pulled into the parallel parking spot behind me and a man got out with his leather-bound folder in hand. I got out of my truck and approached the man with my hand extended for a handshake and said, "Steve." The man said yes and extended his hand with a confused look on his face. His name was Steve too, but it wasn't the Steve I was there to meet. We had a laugh about the coincidence. Aha, happened to me once too. High school quiz bowl. We got a bonus question about an English dude who went off to sea as a teenager and returned in his 20s to write a book about his travels. He'd supposedly fought against the Spanish, turned pirate, then later fought for the Habsburgs in the Ottoman-Austrian War, fought in duels, been captured and sold as a slave, and then escaped. None of us had a clue, so we just stared at each other, and our captain answered Smith. The moderator said more specifically, "Please." Our captain kind of looked at us wildly and said, "John?" It was correct, because that's the same guy who went to Jamestown in Virginia later on, and was involved with the Powhatan tribe and Pocahontas. This is crazy, but I swear this was a question on the Jeopardy YouTube video I watched last night. Meeting my former high school biology teacher 16 years later at the vet hospital I currently work at, and have been part of the team for the past 1.5 years. Apparently she had been a client of this particular hospital back when I was still in high school. The iguana she had in her bio classroom and who she would occasionally let wander around the class was a previous patient there before he was euthanized for declining health. The vet hospital isn't even located in the same city as the high school she used to teach at, either. Even more bizarre is that another biology teacher from the same high school is also a client and he was my sister's freshman bio teacher. Driving on the highway in Maine I noticed two cars from different states with license plates one number off. Example being that Maine plate was AJ 76501 and Massachusetts plate was AJ 76502. I was with a friend who couldn't care less about the coincidence. I played one season of Pee Wee hockey with a dude, and then he stopped playing. 5 years later I ran into him at the San Diego Zoo. We both lived in Texas. Deleted. I knew the ads were right. Horny girls in your area. Sold a motorcycle in 2004. In Denver, to a guy who drove down from Oregon to get it. Saw a bike pic come up on Reddit in 2018. It was the bike I sold, posted by the guy I sold it to. Did you comment on it?